Welcome to Boondog Media. This is Bryce bringing you a brand new video today. Today we're going to be discussing the 10 things to expect with Tom Holland's future as Spider-Man. And before we go into number 10, let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right, coming in at number 10 is going to be that it's just not over. One thing that we need to go ahead and clarify is that Sony has said many times on many interviews that Spider-Man with Tom Holland is not over. There's still the contracted movie for the finish the trilogy out, and that's going to be something great for Tom Holland, as that's something he's always wanted to do, is play the character for the rest of his life, is what he's came out and said. And that's going to be great for a lot of fans of the Tom Holland people, because necessarily the last iteration of Spider-Man didn't get to finish his trilogy with Andrew Garfield, and now it's going to feel pretty great to see have a second trilogy complete with Spider-Man, even if he's not in the MCU anymore, or if by the time this video comes out and down the road there is another deal with Sony and Marvel, even though the doors are currently closed. With recent activities with Sony Pictures creating their own SpiderVerse or Venomverse is what it's currently being called, you would have to think that Tom Holland is now going to eventually cross over, and we'll get to that later. But coming in at number 9, it's going to be the potential Morpheus cameo. Tom Holland is already being rumored to, even if it's just Peter Parker, cameo in the upcoming Morpheus film starring Jared Leto that will be contained in the Venomverse. And it will be very interesting to see how much of a dynamic, if at all, Tom Holland does participate in this film, if he's Spider-Man or just Peter Parker in the background. It really just depends, and it's going to be interesting to see if they take any away on this, because I know recently they just announced that Peter Parker was in the Venom movie and had a scene dedicated to Peter Parker, not Spider-Man, but Peter Parker, and Tom Holland was playing him, but Disney made them cut that out. So now it's only a matter of time to see when or if that will show up. Coming in at number 8, we're going to say that it is the doors being closed as of Sony's main boss, stating, I believe it to Screen Rant, that Spider-Man is officially out. There is no talks going on between them, Disney/Marvel. It is over. But they did say eventually that the doors will be reopened, possibly down the line. But as of now, they are closed. Spider-Man 3 is going to be out of the MCU. Now, to contradict what I just said about number 8, we're going to go into number 7, and that is going to be the doors for Marvel MCU and Spider-Man Return are going to be open. They are going to be signed before Spider-Man 3 comes into play, because, money and storytelling. As you saw the Amazing Spider-Man 2, it was not a success. It was a failure in many people's eyes, and that recently Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland both got together and went on a hike. Now, I may be looking more into it, but a lot of other sites were going into this and talking about how this may be because they are trying to talk with Sony executives and Disney, trying to work something out so Tom Holland can return as Spider-Man in the MCU and not just Spider-Man in the Sony number Venomverse. 6, we have it. It is supposedly a soft reboot. So what I mean by that is that there is talks, especially since the majority of pretty much everything that goes on in the Spider-Man universe as of the last 2 films in this franchise, it revolves around MCU main characters. Like, you have Happy Hogan and Tony Stark as 2 of the biggest characters and biggest influences on Peter Parker's life. And then you think about how also many of his villains, including Mysterio and the Vulture, kind of there just because of Iron Man. So unless they change their motives, then they probably won't return the film, or if they do, they won't bring up the past. And that will be interesting to see how they take care of the Vulture and Mysterio, if those characters are brought back, or those variations. It'd be very interesting to see, because Mysterio is more of an idea in the MCU, which is interesting. I really like Quentin Beck or Jake Gyllenhaal. We don't know if Quentin Beck's just an alias that they're given to whoever is in control of Mysterio's character, but I really would like to see Jake Gyllenhaal return. It was a very awesome performance to see. He is such a great actor,
Same with Michael Keaton. He's phenomenal. He played the Batman. He was the very first person to play a live-action Batman in the films. You can look at Adam West as the original, but that was more of the television side, and it was more campy than it was action-packed. But you think of that, you see these amazing actors, and you kind of want them to return, but you just don't know where they're at, and all we have to do is wait and see how they approach Spider-Man 3. Will those two return? Probably not Mysterio, if anything, and they might just wait and see if the Sinister Six uh, return, if at all. So we'll see. Coming in at number 5, we have a new director or a new vision. As in, what I mean by that is John Watts is not very happy that Spider-Man is leaving the MCU. He is very disappointed in this, and now Sony and Disney are having a war trying to fight and see who's going to take John Watts, because Disney still wants him for other projects in the MCU, why Sony wants him to continue working in the Spider-Man franchise, as he's doing such a great job and doing his own take on the character, but he's not really wanting to do this for some odd reason. I guess it's because he didn't really enjoy the fact that Spider-Man was pulled from the MCU, but we'll just see where it goes from now. I know that the two are still, trying to take the director for future installments in each other's franchises. Coming in at number 4, we have a Venom crossover being even more possible now than ever, because there's been many times that Amy Pascal, the former head of the Spider-Man creative team, as she's now recently moved on, has tried to get Venom into this MCU for forever. Even back in the day, she's like, well, there's a possibility, and Kevin Feige was like, maybe not. But my point is that now that Spider-Man is back in the Sonyverse, or the Venomverse to be more specific, there is more of a chance than ever that the two heroes will team up and fight what may possibly be Carnage, and they may do like a Maximum Carnage thing or something else along the lines. We'll just have to find out and see. But definitely Tom Hardy and Tom Holland seem to have the biggest chances of crossing over yet to this day. For number 3, we have Oscorp's introduction to the Venomverse. And what we saw at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home was not what we expected. We expected to see the building where it said 1, 2, 3, 4, what's next, was supposed to be Oscorp in its introduction into the MCU, but as we know, that necessarily didn't happen to the building of the Avengers Tower. It's now looking like it's going to be the Baxter building for the Fantastic Four. But in the end, we're going to have Oscorp's introduction anytime soon, which will introduce not only Norman Osborn, but Harry Osborn, Peter Parker's best friend. Now, what that means between Harry, Ned, and Peter, we have yet to see if that even does end up doing something like that. We'll probably get some kind of different dynamic between the three if anything happens. It will be interesting to see how that is taken upon. But Norman Osborn is looking to be the overarching villain to Peter Parker and company. But we'll just have to watch and see the future of the Venomverse and what it holds for Norman Osborn and Peter Parker. So earlier I mentioned the Vulture and Mysterio and the idea of the Sinister Six, but that's going to lead us to number 2, which is the Sinister Six will be held on ice. So the way I see it is that Mysterio and the Vulture, two major villains and always are a part of the Sinister Six for the most part, have been used for Tony Stark as a villain, unless they change the origin or something in particular, or the actors or character or anything along the lines. I do not see either those two characters or the Sinister Six happening for a while, until at least the MCU and Sony have a deal put in place to bring back the Venomverse, or technically Tom Holland, and place the Venomverse in there as well. I think that would be the best route to do, but they also technically have the Shocker and Scorpion out there as major villains that they could add to the Sinister Six, leaving only 2 more spots, I believe. But necessarily that doesn't mean that they will be in the Sinister Six. I believe Norman Osborn will lead the Sinister Six, or Doc Ock. You have to have one of the 2 main bads for Spider-Man to go up against. But in the end, we'll just have to see how things go. And finally, number 1 is that there will be a live-action Spider-Verse. You have to think, what money-drawing power can Sony do other than put Tom Holland together? Oh, that's putting Tom Hardy, Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and one person in particular, many people speculated to want to return Tobey Maguire, especially when Marvel posted on Instagram that number 4 in the Spiderwebs. They really thought that was Spider-Man 4 that was in the works. And a lot of people were disappointed when that didn't happen. So that definitely has to show to Marvel, once they saw their reaction to that, what they'd see when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield return to work with Tom Holland. Seeing those 4 with Tom Hardy included as Venom would be phenomenal, having those a part of the Spider-Verse. That is the biggest thing that they can do. And that's what they necessarily can pretty much recreate the storyline um, behind the Spider-Verse. Instead of doing Kingpin, they could do Norman Osborn, leading up to like the grand finale of phase 1 of this Venomverse. Pretty much, you can say bring in Norman Osborn and have him be the villain and replace Kingpin's role with that. And necessarily, it worked pretty well. Actually, it'd be very interesting to see. You can put Tom Holland uh, in Miles Morales' shoes and replace Peter B. Parker with Tobey Maguire, and also still have Andrew Garfield there to teach as well. But I feel like a Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland interaction between mentor and student would be phenomenal for many people to see, and a lot of people would love that and go to theaters to see that. I personally would go see it just because it's the person that grew up watching Spider-Man and the guy that plays Spider-Man now. It'd be very emotional between the three. I believe their dynamics and the way they work together. Overall, that is the top 10 things to expect for Tom Holland's future as Spider-Man. If you guys like this, please drop a like down below. Only if you did, hit a subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can select to do or have notifications appear on certain videos. It'd be random or all our videos. And we really appreciate all the love that you guys give us, and thank you for all your time. And this has been Bryce with Big No Media. As always, guys,